Hello, dear viewers. You are on the channel Alien Relatives. I present to you my new story. Take off your shoes. This place has just been washed. This cry must have belonged to Oksana because this was her apartment, her floor, and her microfiber cloth drying on the balcony. But the voice was alien, creaky like an unoiled hinge and commanding. Oksana froze in the doorway. The key turned in the lock too easily, as if someone had recently lubricated the mechanism. Vaitali usually didn't bother with such trifles. A thick, heavy smell assaulted her nose. A mixture of cheap laundry detergent, old dust, and stewed cabbage. The smell of strangers. The hallway, where usually stood only her beige pumps and her husband's sneakers, was now a barricade. Okay, was then Zatnamenda. Checkered shuttle bag is bulging with junk. A pair of men's shoes with sagging heels, boxes tied. Heat paharan open. On her favorite velvet-covered bench sat a plump ginger cat, whom Oksana was seeing for the first time in her life. The cat looked at her with the same expression as the woman who had peeked out from the kitchen. Tamara Lvovna, her mother-in-law. She stood in the doorway, wiping her wet hands on her apron. Oksana's apron, the very one with the embroidered lavender fields that a friend had brought her from Provence. "Oh, is that you?" Tamara Lvovna said instead of Hati Samalitisakara. "And we're just getting settled in here. Vitalik, your wife has arrived. Go greet her, otherwise she's standing there like an outsider, ma." Vitali shuffled out of the room in slippers. He looked strangely agitated, his eyes darting, and that Oksana hated playing on his lips. A mixture of cowardice and unfounded brow. Another figure loomed behind him, skinny, hunched in a baggy t-shirt. Kostya, his brother-in-law. A disaster of a man, 37 years old, but with the mentality of a teenager from the wrong crowd. "Hi, Oksanchik." Vitali tried to kiss her on the cheek, but she pulled away. "What's going on here?" Oksana's voice was quiet, but the silence clanged with steel. "Why is there a warehouse in the hallway? Where did the cat come from? And why is your mother wearing my apron?" Vitali scratched his head, exchanging glances with his brother. Kostya grinned insolently, picking his teeth with a toothpick. "Come on, honey, don't get so worked up. The situation is so complicated. Mom and Kostya had to move out temporarily. Well, you understand, there are problems with the rent. The landlord is a beast. Anyway, they will stay with us for now. There is plenty of space. We have a two-room apartment, Vitali. A two-room apartment, a bedroom, and a living room which also serves as my office. Where do you think they will live?" Tamara Lvovna, of course, wedged herself into the living room, already inspecting Oksana's package. "The sofa there is nice and wide. Kostya will fit in the fold-out chair. And we'll put our thing. Look, you have plenty of..." Oksana felt the blood. It was not a question. They already looked at her. Oksana looked her husband straight in the eyes. "We didn't discuss this. You didn't ask me. You just brought them here. Well, I was at work. What is there to discuss?" Vitali spread his hands, and the gesture was so condescendingly dismissive that Oksana wanted to hit him. My family is in trouble. Where should I put them? Throw them out on the street. Into a hotel? Rent an apartment? Talk to me, finally. Then Kostya, who had been silent until then, suddenly giggled. The sound was disgusting, gurgling. Listen, Vitaly, I told you she'd start asserting her rights. My space, personal boundaries, all this psychology for the rich. Oksana turned her gaze to her brother-in-law. He looked at her as if she were empty space like service personnel, who had suddenly spoken up. Hey, that's. So you're seriously considering moving your mother and 37-year-old brother from Tunya into our apartment just to present me with a fait accompli? Oksana raised her voice, feeling a cold rage boiling inside. Viley just smirked, leaning leisurely against the doorframe. Where else are you going? The apartment is shared. By law, I have the right to use my share. My guests, my family. Tamara Lvovna, already taking a stick of expensive dry-cured sausage from the bag which Oksana had bought for the company party, raised a finger admonishingly. Exactly, Oksanochka, it's shared. And you're being selfish. We'll probably only live here for a couple of months, happily, in cramped quarters, but we won't be offended. Oh, and the sausage is fresh. Bustic, put the kettle on. We'll make some sandwiches now. Oksana watched her sausage disappear into the depths of the kitchen. Kostik slapped his bare feet on her parquet floor like he owned the place. Vitaly averted his eyes, but continued to smirk. The first night was hell. The walls in the house weren't bad, but even the tightly closed bedroom door couldn't stop the snoring coming from the living room. They were snoring together. Tamara Lvovna belted out booming bass solos, and Kostya whistled like a broken kettle. Vitaly slept like a baby. He had accomplished his mission, saved his family. Oksana lay staring at the ceiling, where the streetlights flickered, counting and counting. Her money, her nerves, and her options for salvation. Oh, Berisepsh. In the morning, the domestic terror began. Oksana got up at 6:30. This was her time. Shower, coffee, silence, getting ready for the workday. Today at 6:30, the bathroom was occupied. From there came the sound of running water and the coughing of bones. Kostya, I have to go to work. She knocked. Just a minute, it's in progress. Devil responded. He came out 20 minutes later. The bathroom resembled a bathhouse after a barbarian invasion. The mirror was spattered and puddles on the floor. A heavy, musty smell hung in the air. Her towel, snow white and fluffy, lay on the washing machine, wet and crumpled. He dried himself with it. Oksana shuddered. She silently picked up the towel with the 2 fingers and tossed it into the laundry basket. The kitchen was in chaos. Tamara was frying croutons with great gusto. Not just croutons, but bread soaked in oil that it could be squeezed out. The smoke billowed. No one had turned on the hood. Oh, the princess has woken up. Her mother-in-law was busy with a spatula. Sit down and eat. You're as skinny as a herring. Vitalik needed a normal woman in his body. I don't eat fried food for breakfast, Oksana replied dryly, opening the refrigerator. The shelves had been rearranged. Her yogurts, cheese, and vegetables had been shoved into the far corner. In the foreground stood pots of something greasy and jars of venison that her mother had brought. and a bottle of half-empty beer. "Vitally," she called. Her husband entered the kitchen, scratching his stomach. "What's all the noise?" "Why beer for breakfast?" "That Kostya thing was left over from last night, or..." "Stop nagging." "Speaking of groceries, Oksana closed the refrigerator. Since there are 4 of us now, we're reconsidering the budget. You owe me 50,000 a month for food and utilities, and that's reasonable." Silence fell over the kitchen. Tamara Lvovna froze with her spatula. Kostya, who had just entered, scratching his lower back, widened his eyes. "Are you crazy?" hissed the brother-in-law. We're in a tough spot. No money. Mother's retired. There's a pension. And your Kostya with a healthy forehead, arms and legs in place. Go work as a loader, a courier, a taxi driver. I'm finding myself. I won't toil for pennies, Kostya snapped. Vitali, tell her. Vitali winced. Oksana, really, people are in trouble. They'll live for a month, get back on their feet. A month, Oksana grinned. Fine, in a month, either give them the money or get out and buy your own groceries, sabes. Don't touch mine. She took an apple, her bag, and left the apartment, slamming the door. For the next 3 days, Oksana came home late, staying late at work. Returning, she discovered more signs of destruction. A cat was sleeping on her suede brush in the hallway. The living room converted into a flophouse. The TV screen was smeared with fingerprints. Tamara Lvovna watched soap operas at such a volume that the walls vibrated. But the most interesting thing began with the little things. Oksana noticed that her poor relatives behaved strangely for people who didn't even have money for bread. Oksana had made a point of stopping buying groceries for everyone, limiting herself to her own rations, which she hid in her room or ate at work. They were surprisingly calm. Kostya never left the house. He sat in the living room, propped up with pillows, constantly fiddling with his smartphone. Every time the doorbell rang, he'd flinch and crawl sideways, crab-like into the hallway, away from the people. His favorite plaid bag wasn't in the closet, as his mother-in-law had promised, but behind the sofa. Touching it was strictly forbidden. When Oksana tried to vacuum behind the sofa, Kostya jumped as if scalded. Don't go there. It's personal stuff. It's fragile. What's fragile there? The family crystal. Oksana snapped. None of your business. He barked, and a genuine animalistic fear flickered in his eyes. Vitali was also acting suspiciously. He became twitchy, constantly whispering to his mother and brother in the kitchen, but fell silent the moment Oksana walked in. Vital, she asked on the evening of the 3rd day when they were alone in the bedroom. What's going on? Did Kostya kill someone? Why is he afraid to go out for cigarettes? Don't make things up. Her husband nervously shrugged. He was depressed, and the breakup was tough. With whom? With his job? With a woman. The woman was complex, rich, a real character. He was recovering now. Oksana remained silent. Her intuition told her the puzzle was unraveling. There was a catastrophic shortage of food in the house. Tamara, with ostentatious, air-cooked empty pasta, and sighed loudly when Oksana poured herself coffee from good beans. There, son, the mother-in-law read, looking at the gloomy Kostya. We eat what God sends, and some people live on the hog. Mom, leave me alone, Kostya snapped. Oksana noticed one detail. Kostya had a new phone, the latest iPhone. He tried not to show it to anyone, but once forgot it face down on the table. Where did an unemployed man running from an angry landlord get a gadget worth 150,000 Alapasian? The denouement came on Thursday. Oksana scored a goal, but didn't tell her husband about it. She simply got dressed in the morning, left the house, walked around the neighborhood, drank coffee at a bakery, and returned an hour later when, according to the calculations, Vitalite should have left for work in morning. She quietly opened the door with her key. The apartment was quiet. Vitaly left. Tamara Lvovna's voice came from the living room. Just be patient, Kostya. We'll wait another week. The dust will settle. Then we'll go to Thailand, like you wanted, or to Turkey. Thank you. Mom, I can't eat this pasta anymore. Devious, capricious voice. We have stacks of millions lying there, and we look like beggars. I want to order a pizza with truffles. Quiet, you idiot. Mother hissed. The neighbors will hear. Vitalka said to her quietly, don't show yourself. Oksanka is a meticulous rat. If she sees that we have money, she'll immediately demand a share or start asking questions. Let her think we're orphans. Oksana, standing in the hallway, laughed behind her hand. Her heart was pounding somewhere in her throat. Stacks of millions are lying in Thailand. She's stupid, Mom. She works all day for pennies. And now we are kings. Say hello to that senile old woman, Lyuska. 12 million. Imagine. She's probably still take Valeria. Oh, don't talk about Yudochka. It's a sin. It's her own fault, the old fool. Why did she show the safe to a young man? She's in love. Ugh. Oksana slowly, trying not to creak the floorboards, back toward the door. She went out onto the landing and carefully closed the lock. She was shaken, but not from fear, but from rage and excitement. 37-year-old Alphonse had robbed his elderly flatmate, Lyudmila Lyuska, 12 million, and they were sitting in her apartment fraying her nerves, pretending to be poor relatives with a fortune right their fingertips. And Vitalka said, sit quietly, my husband knew. Oksana took out her phone. Her hands were shaking, but her head was clearer than ever. She didn't call Vitaly. She opened a search. Theft of money, pensioner looking for witnesses. Latest news, city, nothing. Perhaps the statement hadn't reached the media yet, or she tried another way. I went to the city's social media group, scrolled through the last 3 days and found this. A post in the group was overheard. Help find the scammer. He's gaining the trust of older women. He introduces himself as Konstantin. On October 14, help left the home of Ms. Svortsova, after which her savings and valuables disappeared in you. A photo is attached. It was of Kostya, younger, with filters and a white shirt, but it was him. The comments were full of curses. Someone wrote, that's the local Alphonse. He's on a dating site. Oksana saved the screenshot, then dialed 911. Police? I want to report the perpetrator to the location. Major theft. Yes, I'm sure. The address. She was waiting for them in the courtyard, sitting on a bench under an old maple tree. The police arrived surprisingly quickly. Finally, the 12 million rubles made the case a priority. And Lyuska turned out to have influential relatives. 2 police officers, and 1 civilian detective. You called. Operative. A man with a keen gaze approached her. This is my apartment. They might have barricaded themselves there. Who exactly? My brother-in-law, Konstantin Romanov, and his mother. He stole money from women. A large sum. The money most likely was a reception. A light bag behind the sofa. And in the safe, although, no, we don't have a safe. Just in the bag. The operative chuckled and exchanged glances with his partners. Open up. Oksana opened the door. The police entered quietly, professionally. She remained in the doorway, watching them. Everyone stay where you are. I checked. The policeman barked as he entered the living room. The sound of a falling plate. Tamara Lvovna's whisper. The crumb of an overturned table. Who are you? By what right did the mother-in-law scream? Konstantin Romanov unlocked the door and stepped toward the sofa where Kostya was trying to cover the bag he'd brought with him like an egg. Miss Vertsova sends her regards. Hold your hands where I can see. This is a mistake. This is mine, Kostya screamed, but someone had already professionally restrained him. Hey, Amy. His brother-in-law's face was imprinted on the carpet Oksana had cleaned last weekend. Well, there goes the dry cleaners again. A distant thought flashed. The detective tugged at the zipper on the checkered bag. Inside, under the zipper, lay stacks of 5,000 ruble bills tied with rubber bands carelessly mixed with dirty socks and cartons of cigarettes. You can't forbid living beautifully, the policeman whistled. We need witnesses. Oksana stepped forward. I'm the owner of the apartment. I saw everything. Tamara Lvovna, pale with trembling lips, suddenly noticed her daughter-in-law in the doorway. You, she howled, jabbing her fingers at Oksana. You did this, you snake in the grass. You betrayed your own people. Do you know what Vitalik will do to you for this? You're Vitalin, the detective said coldly, getting handcuffs for his mother-in-law as well. He'll be charged as an accomplice. Harboring a criminal, plus possibly conspiracy. You knew where the money came from? We didn't know anything, the mother-in-law screamed, instantly changing tactics. Kostya brought it and said he earned it. We're ordinary people. Yeah, he earned it, the detective grinned. 12 million, as a loader. At that moment, Vitaly burst into the apartment out of breath. Apparently his mother had managed to call him. He froze in the doorway, seeing the men in uniform. His brother, face down on the floor, and his mother, whom the policeman was gently but firmly seating on the table. What's going on? Vitaly turned pale. Oksana approached her husband. He looked at her with horror and hope. Oksana, tell them it's a mistake. We'll return it. What will you return, Vital? Oksana spoke quietly, but into the ensuing silence, every word fell like a stone. The money of the old woman your brother slept with, or my trust. You knew, he whispered. I found out today, and you knew from the start. You brought a thief into my house. You forced me to feed you, listen to your complaints about poverty, while you sat on sacks of millions. You didn't even buy bread, you misers. She turned to the detective. Take them all. I need to air out the apartment. The investigation didn't take long. The evidence base was ironclad. Fingerprints, witness statements. Lyuska's neighbors saw the suit. The phone billing. Lyudmila Petrovna, that same old woman, turned out to be a woman of character and connections. Formerly the chief accountant of a large plant. She clung to the case with a death grip. Kostya tried to blame it on a gift, but phone messages, in which she and his mother discussed how to dump an 08 corgi completely destroyed his defense. The trial took place a month later. Oksana filed for divorce and division of property immediately after his arrest. Vitaly, under a travel ban, tried to appeal to her sympathy, threatened her, and even sent her mother, who was also under a travel ban. But Oksana simply changed the locks and hired a lawyer. A good lawyer, using the money she had saved for a rainy day. The rainy day had her, and she intended to turn it into celebration of her release. At the final hearing, when Kostya's sentence was read, Oksana sat in the front row. It was important for her to see it. Kostya received a 5-year prison sentence, a general regime penal colony. Vitaly and Tamara Lvovna received suspended sentences for concealing and using stolen goods. They proved they spent part of the money on that iPhone and paying off my mother's mortgage. After the verdict was read, as the guards led the sobbing man away, and Vitaly stood there, his face gray and lifeless, the judge approached an elderly man with intelligent eyes. He had already taken off his robe and was gathering papers. "Are you that wife?" he asked, looking at her over his glasses. "Ex-wife," Oksana corrected. "You know, I've seen." The judge shook his head, and the corners of his lips twitched. "But when I read the case materials, especially the transcript of your conversation with your husband, he opened the folder and quoted, looking at the dejected Vitaly, who hadn't yet had time to leave. Just think of it. Moving How can you underestimate a woman like that? The irony of fate. The apartment was shared, and now it will probably be sold to pay fines and lawsuits and to divide assets in the divorce. But if they had bought that loaf of bread and not been greedy, they might even be sitting at a ball somewhere right now." Fry's greed was literally his undoing. Oksana smiled, sincerely for the first time in months. The apartment had gone quickly, the market was vibrant. The money had been split evenly. The investments proved equal. Vitaly paid compensation to Lyudmila Petrovna from his share. Kostya had managed to embezzle some of the money, something Oksana didn't even know. He'd paid the fine and the fees of an expensive but useless lawyer. Oksana took out a mortgage on a small but very cozy European-style apartment in the center, with a view of the park. On her first evening in the new apartment, she ordered a pizza with truffles and sat down on her own sofa. No one would ever sleep on without her permission. There was silence all around. No snoring, no smell of cheap tobacco or stewed cabbage. She took a sip of wine, remembering her mother-in-law's contorted face in the courtroom. "Where will she go?" Oksana whispered into the void and laughed. The laughter was light, ringing, happy. She hadn't gone anywhere, and she simply moved on. And the dead weight remained at the bottom.